Many people over 60 believe that slowing down is simply part of aging. But sometimes the real problem is not age at all. It's a quiet habit that slowly changes the way the body and mind feel each day. If you stay with this story, you'll see how one man learned that lesson the hard way, and what it can teach anyone entering the later chapters of life. Robert Hayes had spent most of his life in motion. For nearly 40 years, he worked as a postal carrier in Tampa, Florida. Every weekday morning before sunrise, Robert would lace up his sturdy walking shoes, climb into his small mail truck, and begin delivering letters across neighborhoods filled with palm trees, tidy lawns, and quiet sidewalks. It was a job that kept him moving constantly. He walked miles every day, climbed porch steps, carried heavy bags of mail, and chatted with the same familiar residents year after year. Some people joked that Robert probably knew the streets of Tampa better than the city planners themselves. Back then, his days felt full. Not exciting in a dramatic way, but steady, purposeful. When he returned home in the late afternoon, tired but satisfied, his wife Carol would usually be waiting with dinner already simmering on the stove. Life had a rhythm, but time moves quietly. Carol passed away from cancer when Robert was 61. By the time he reached 64, Robert finally retired from the postal service. His coworkers gathered at a small seafood restaurant by the bay to celebrate. They shook his hand, told stories about the old days, and wished him a peaceful retirement. At the time, Robert believed peace was exactly what he wanted. For decades, he had worked through rainstorms, humid Florida summers, and long holiday seasons. The idea of waking up without an alarm clock sounded almost luxurious. And at first, it was. During the first few weeks after retirement, Robert slept later than usual. Instead of leaving the house before sunrise, he would sit quietly on the back patio with a cup of coffee, listening to the distant sounds of traffic and birds moving through the palm trees. The stillness felt comforting. He watched morning light slowly stretch across the backyard. For the first time in years, there was no schedule waiting for him, but slowly, something subtle began to change. Without realizing it, Robert's daily movement disappeared. When he worked, walking had simply been part of life. He never thought of it as exercise. But now, without the job that forced him to stay active, most of his day happened in one place: the recliner in the living room. It started harmlessly enough. Robert would sit down after breakfast to watch the news. Then maybe a documentary. Then a baseball game replay in the afternoon. The Florida heat made going outside less appealing, especially during the summer months. Just for today, he told himself. But days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. The long walks he once took without thinking were replaced by long hours sitting quietly inside. At first, Robert barely noticed. But by early autumn, he started feeling something unfamiliar. Fatigue. Not the good kind of tired he used to feel after a long day delivering mail. This was different. He felt sluggish even after sleeping well. Walking up the stairs inside his house felt slightly heavier than before. He assumed it was just age. After all, he was 64 now. Things slowed down, right? So Robert ignored it. A few months later, another small change appeared. His jeans fell tighter around the waist. The number on the scale slowly climbed upward. He shrugged it off again. "I'm retired now," he said to his neighbor Frank during a short conversation by the mailbox. "Guess I'm allowed to enjoy life a little." Frank laughed and nodded, but Robert's body was quietly sending signals. His sleep became lighter. Some mornings he woke up feeling stiff in his lower back. Even simple chores like carrying groceries from the car felt more tiring than they used to. Still, he told himself the same thing. This is just what getting older feels like. Around that time, Robert's daughter Emily visited from Orlando with her 2 young kids. The house felt lively again for a weekend. Laughter filled the kitchen, and toys scattered across the living room floor. On Sunday morning, Emily asked her father if he wanted to take the kids to a nearby park. Robert agreed. But halfway through the walk along the paved path, he felt something strange. His legs felt unusually heavy. He slowed down. The children ran ahead, chasing each other across the grass while Emily turned and looked back at him. "You okay, Dad?" she asked gently. Robert smiled. "Just out of practice," he replied. But later that evening, sitting quietly on the couch after they had left, Robert noticed something uncomfortable. He was breathing harder than he used to after only a short walk. That thought lingered longer than he expected. For the first time, he wondered if something had actually changed. Still, he pushed the idea aside. Winter in Florida is mild and comfortable, and Robert spent many afternoons sitting outside again. But the habit of sitting most of the day remained. Then one morning in February, during a routine doctor's appointment, something unexpected happened. Robert's physician, doctor, reviewed his chart carefully. His blood pressure had risen slightly. His weight had increased. His resting heart rate was higher than during previous visits. Nothing alarming yet. But Doctor leaned back in his chair and asked a simple question. How much do you move during the day now that you're retired? Robert paused. Well, not as much as when I was working. The doctor nodded slowly. That's very common after retirement, he said. But the body adapts quickly. When daily movement disappears, muscles weaken, circulation slows, and energy levels drop. Robert listened quietly. Doctor continued speaking in a calm tone. The good news is that this is one of the easiest problems to fix if you catch it early. That sentence stayed with Robert long after he left the clinic. Driving home through the quiet streets of Tampa, he replayed the doctor's words in his mind. One of the easiest problems to fix. He thought about the years he spent walking miles each day without even noticing. Back then, movement had been part of life. Now it was something he had quietly removed. The realization felt uncomfortable, but also hopeful. The next morning, Robert did something he hadn't done in months. He put on his old walking shoes. They were slightly worn from decades of postal routes, but still sturdy. Early sunlight filtered through the palm trees as he stepped outside. At first, the walk felt slow. His legs felt stiff, and his breathing was heavier than he remembered. But after 10 minutes, something familiar returned. A gentle rhythm of steps, the quiet sound of birds, the smell of morning air. He walked only 15 minutes that first day, but it was enough. Over the next week, Robert repeated the routine. Sometimes he walked around the neighborhood. Other days, he followed a small trail near a local park. Gradually, something inside his body began to shift again. His energy improved slightly. His sleep became deeper. Even his mood felt lighter. What surprised Robert most was how quickly the change happened once he started moving again. He realized something important. The habit that had weakened him wasn't dramatic or obvious. It was simply sitting too much. And the solution wasn't complicated either, just moving again. Robert's story isn't unusual. Many people over 60 experience the same quiet shift after retirement. When daily routines disappear, movement often disappears with them. The body slowly adapts to that stillness, and not in a good way. But the lesson here is encouraging. Small changes can have powerful effects. Even gentle daily movement helps keep muscles strong, joints flexible, and circulation healthy. Walking, light stretching, gardening, or simply spending more time standing instead of sitting can gradually restore energy. Social connection matters too. Walking with a neighbor, visiting a park, or joining a local activity group adds motivation and emotional support. Regular health checkups also play an important role. Doctors can often spot early signs of change before they become serious problems. And perhaps most important of all is mindset. Aging doesn't mean becoming inactive. In many ways, staying active becomes even more important after retirement. Movement supports not only physical health but also mental clarity, emotional balance, and independence. Robert still walks most mornings now. Sometimes he stops by a small cafe afterward for coffee. Sometimes he simply sits on a park bench watching the world move around him. Life hasn't become busy again like it once was, but it has regained something valuable: energy, purpose, and a quiet understanding that the choices we make each day, even the small ones, shape how we feel in the years ahead. Growing older is natural, but giving up movement doesn't have to be. Sometimes the path to feeling stronger again begins with something very simple: just standing up and taking the first step.